I guess the project got started when I went to Indiana and visited with my grandparents. I took my video camera and sat them down to interview them about their relationship and their lives. What they had to say was extremely inspirational and obviously turned into a much bigger project.
I wish I knew more people who were in happy, successful relationships so that I could have a model.
The big illusion is there is a residual belief in most of the population that we naturally know how to be married and we know how to be parents. But if you look at our society and civilization, we clearly don't.
You can feel deep attachment to one person while you feel intense romantic love for somebody else, while you feel the sex drive for a group of people unrelated to either of the other two.
So we want to understand a little bit about what dating's like in LA.
It feels a lot like just putting your head in a toilet and flushing.
Do you think marriage can last forever?
Yes.
The most significant relationships that I've seen are based on something that's pretty much the antithesis of our culture, which would be commitment.
We really believe that there is somewhere somebody that's going to fulfill all my dreams forever.
I didn't realize that adultery was as common until after I went through it.
When it gets really bad, that's when it's about to change. And most people leave when it's really bad. So they never get to the change. And I think that's such a tragedy.
I've probably interviewed 500 people or so in the last 5 years. You know, just people from all walks of life, including, you know, some of the top experts in this field that have spent their lives researching this and trying to help people.
Do you guys realize how therapeutic this could be for someone now?
Very few conversations like that take place in this country. And I think that's a terrible shame. Maybe this movie will make a difference.
He was darn good looking. Well, he's still good looking yet.
I guess it was meant to last.
He treated me with respect, and even guys in those days, there were a few that didn't do that.
We've had a lot of good times together. We've had a lot of heartaches together. But I guess living and loving. Having arguments and making it.
Would you like to live? Could you learn to love like they have?
But that's pretty much our lifestyle.
Completely, utterly naive 19-year-old infatuation, head over heels, couldn't stop thinking about him, crazy. Well, he broke up with me, which was devastating. Probably. And the weird thing about it is that I still haven't gotten over it, I think. And it's so surprising because I feel like I've grown up so much and I'm, you know, this really together person, but I'm still in love with the guy that I fell in love with when I was 19 or 18 or whatever.
It's all in your head, little girl. It's all in your head, little girl. This is all in your head.
Have you ever been dumped by somebody who you really loved? And another question was, have you ever dumped somebody who really loved you? And over something like 95% of men and women said yes to both. Very few people get out of love alive. We all feel the elation and we also feel the despair. And I often wondered why? Why don't we just walk away when somebody dumps us? Why go through all this abandonment rage and frustration, attraction, and the despair response?
The more intensely you fall in love, the deeper the wound was in childhood.
My mom stayed with my dad for 17 years in a horrible relationship. My parents fought like crazy, man. It was just horrible.
And when you look at our past, any of our past, we've all had something happen in our lives early on when we were these wide-eyed, innocent children, just full of love and full of self-expression, and everything was possible, and everything was new in every moment. And then something came along in our lives, whether it be our first relationship, our first heartbreak, or the first angry words from a father, whatever it might be, something shut us down. And then there was a series of those events that happened. And you start to realize that that experience that you had around that pain, that wound, was so severe that you naturally, in your young developing mind, you say, I never want to experience that again for the rest of my life.
And that would be me. I'm the luckiest man on the planet, dude. I really am, dude. She's... Sometimes when I think about what I have with her, man, it makes me, I mean, I want to, and I have, dude. I cry, man. And it's like, you know, it's obviously not tears of sadness. It's tears of joy, man. And it's like, I can't even believe it, dude. I cannot believe how God has blessed me, dude.
Are you alive? And do you dream? Do you sing about things you want to be?
And now we've been together for 6 years, and we're engaged to be married in November, and it is the most amazing relationship I've ever been in my life.
The scary thing is, though, sometimes I think I'm just going to wake up one day and I'll be like, this is not real. And that's the key, is it's kind of like Max from The Mirror. And the one song, I don't even know what the name of the song is, but from the first album, it's like, white knuckles softly. Honestly, it's like you hold on, but you can't hold on so tight that you're white knuckling it, that you squeeze it to death. You gotta let it breathe, you know what I mean?
White knuckles softly. And so beautiful. If you're happy and so
I've come to believe that we've evolved 3 distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction. One is the sex drive, the craving for sexual gratification. The second is romantic love, that elation and focused attention and craving for a particular individual. And the third is attachment, that sense of calm and security that you can feel for a long-term partner. But I think the most powerful reason that you fall for one person rather than another is what I call your love map. And what a love map is, it's an unconscious list, some of them are conscious, but a largely unconscious list of characteristics that you're looking for in a mate that you developed during childhood.
I said I was going to order one from Santa Claus.
Order up a wife?
Yes.
Maybe that's what everybody should do, is start ordering their mates from Santa Claus.
Or their women's.
Their women's?
or I mean, the women's can order their husbands.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Mates. Girls or boys.
And then when the time is right, you're in college or you've just gotten a divorce or you've gotten older and your spouse has died and you're beginning to look for another partner, and you walk into a room and there's 4 people in the room, they're all dressed in a way that suits you. They're all from your general background. You find them all interesting. And you talk to 3 of them, and they're perfectly wonderful people, but it doesn't light that brain system. And then you talk to the 4th, and that person somehow fits within your love map.
Oh my God, I think I just met the man I'm going to marry. And she was like, well, have you gone out with him yet? And I'm like, no, that's a detail.
The night we met, I told my friend when I got home that I met the man I was going to marry.
And boom, that system gets ignited and you fall madly in love.
I've got 20 years to find that person and settle down and grow old, because basically companionship when you're old is the most important thing.
We all remember our first love, the excitement, the passion, and all the mystery. But seldom does that last. And why is it so hard for some of us to move on?
I wrote a song that was pretty intense and sent it to him, and he didn't get it. To have somebody write a song about you like that is really nice and really intimate, and still no response. And I don't know if it's, I must just be like some kind of crazy person who just maybe I like him because he doesn't like me, I don't know. I think that I started to believe that there was a sense of fate about him, and that we really were destined to be together. I don't know why he doesn't like me. And I was just thinking, I wanted to ask him, point blank, what is your problem?
When you love somebody, you are investing your very precious courtship time and energy. And we don't have much time on this planet, and we do need to reproduce. And if you invest a great deal in somebody and then that is taken away from you, you've lost very precious biological energy.
I truly believe that through all of my experiences, but also doing the work, really doing the work on myself and loving myself is how I attracted him.
I was in a 13-year marriage before I met Nadia. And I was pretty certain that the last thing I wanted was to go into another relationship. I was pretty convinced of that. And then along comes Nadia. And my pattern in the past had always been jumping from one to the next, just to kind of cushion the blow, And so I really, even though my heart was so clear, saying, wow, this is the one you've been waiting for, there was part of me that said, is that true? Or are you just really trying to, take the heat off of what you're going through right now?
It's kind of like the go-to place for me when I feel like I need hope. The promise of romance is such a hopeful feeling.
I got married when I was 21 with the expectation that was going to last forever. That's what we're conditioned to believe and think, that this is till death do us part. And when you look at what's going on in society, it's clearly not till death do us part for now a majority of couples.
We have impossible dreams expectation. For example, we really believe that there is somewhere somebody that's going to fulfill all my dreams forever.
So this is really like the big problem, is that it's a lack of personal responsibility about their own emotional state. And having an expectation that a relationship is going to fulfill missing parts of yourself that it cannot fill. The only thing a relationship can fill in you is the relationship part. It can't fulfill low self-esteem. It can't fulfill frustrated career ambition. It can't fulfill anything that it's not designed to fulfill.
But we don't want to give up the dream. So the code for love in America is very clear, is false expectation. We expect something so much. We expect one person to to fulfill all your needs and dreams forever. It might happen once in a while. Some people might, but if you look at the numbers, half of marriage ends in a divorce.
I feel like our society is so like disposable. Like if something doesn't work, then like something's not, like you don't want to fix it. You're just like whatever, get over it and get divorced.
Even from a marketing perspective, there's a car commercial out there that says, hey, you don't like your nose? Get rid of it. You don't like your boss? Get a new job. You don't like your wife? Change her out. And their tagline is, whatever happened to commitment? Well, we understand commitment, and that's why we give you the 100,000-mile warranty. Well, my whole point is that that's clever marketing, but also it makes a statement about our society.
I think that some of the most significant marriages that I've seen, the most significant relationships that I've seen, are based on something that's pretty much the antithesis of our culture, which would be commitment. I think when people really commit and put their trust, their faith in another person in the context of marriage, I think then they have the foundation to build a great relationship.
And the big illusion is there is a residual belief in most of the population that we naturally know how to be married and we know how to be parents. But if you look at our society and civilization, we clearly don't. If you look at all the books on our shelves that have been written about how to be married, clearly nobody agrees with that. But it's a sort of an unconscious thing.
First of all, we have to realize that this notion that we have today of a man and a woman living together, sometime with 1 or 2 children, we call that the nucleus family, is new, is very new, is like 100 years old. Didn't existed before, never. So for the first time now, we isolate, we take people out of their environment, and then we take them to the city, and when we put them in a little room, and they're supposed to be a family. I mean, this is not the... Before we had extended family. We have all the people living together, the young, the old, the grandparents. I mean, to separate the grandparents from the grandchildren is a mistake. We know that. So this notion of taking people, a man and a woman, out of their environment, putting them in a box, and then expecting them to be happy to be alone together, if I can say that, is very weird, is very new.
100 years ago, marriage was just as fragile as it is today, literally just as fragile. 100 years ago, your husband or wife was likely to either desert you or die. Today, we divorce instead. In fact, historians now believe that modern divorce is just a social response to a pattern that has always been in the human animal. In fact, we're seeing more long marriages today than we did ever in human history because we're living longer. We're now seeing 35 and 40-year marriages. I know a couple who've been married for 73 years. You would never find that. During all of human evolution, you really wouldn't have found that.
She didn't go out with any other fellas, and I didn't take out any other girls. And I've never had another girlfriend, and she tells me she's never had another boyfriend. And I don't think she has. Let's see, that was 70 years ago. Last February the 7th. 70 years that we've been married.
This issue of staying together for 50 or 60 or 70 years was unimaginable. This is a new problem that you guys are exploring. It's a new problem in the scope of human history.
I used to think, well, how can you commit to anything forever, really? It just doesn't really make sense.
Marriage to me is not just a piece of paper. It's really sort of a rite of passage, a sacred union that you have with your partner, and that's been lost in our society, in our culture.
So back on the vows, even though I've tried to evade that, and you have somehow brought me right back to it. Thank you very much. On the spot, Mr. Brickler.
I hadn't really thought about my vows, actually, so it's kind of weird. I mean, I can tell you what it is in our relationship right now that I love, and that why I feel like it works is because we always have this openness with one another.
We all want to be in a relationship, but when you choose to and you make that decision, there's so much freedom and commitment.
I was in the Philippines with my family, and he was still in Los Angeles, and he was going to meet me there. And he called me on the phone, and he was like, "Oh, you know, I'm coming, and I made the slideshow of photos from last time we were in the Philippines." He's a photographer, and took amazing pictures of the Philippines our last trip. And I'm like, "Okay, great." And he's like, "So can we get the family together and, you know, have a presentation?" I was like, "Sure, honey, of course." So we grabbed, you know, my laptop computer, and we put it in my parents' room.
And so I thought, wow, it could be really cool to do this around her, in front of her parents.
And he's holding up a sign, a cardboard sign that said, "My girl." And then my sisters were like, "Oh, is this from your birthday?" Because I had just had a birthday. And I was like, "No." And then the next slide came up, and it was another sign, and it said, "My best friend." And then the next slide said, "Love of my life." And then the next slide said, "My sweet Nadia, please be my wife." And everybody just started screaming. My mom started screaming, and my sisters were like crying. And then he was already down on his knees, and he looked at my dad, and he said, "May I have your permission?" And my dad said, "By all means." And by this time, I'm just in shock. I'm totally in shock. And he pulls out the ring, and this beautiful ring that he designed himself, and he asked me to marry him. And I said yes, of course.
It was early because we were going to square dance. We always square danced on Saturday night. So we started to leave and got down to the bottom of the hill from where they lived, and he turned into a country lane. And I thought, oh, now wait a minute here. And we got to down into the lane a little ways, and he stopped the car, and he kissed me and handed me a ring box, and it had my diamond in it. It was a very, very insignificant diamond, but to me it was as big as the Hope diamond.
Today there is really a different mindset among people about relationships. I mean, in the grandparents' day, marriage was what you did, and there was a huge stigma against living together, against premarital sex, against divorce, not only stigma but laws, a lot of cases. So this is how they planned their life. They got married, and this is what the culture dictated to them, and they didn't even think of divorce. And of course they probably went through as many difficulties as people do today in relationships, but it wasn't a cause for divorce. Today all of that's changed, and young people, there's no cultural norm. Divorce is very easy. There's no stigma against premarital sex very much. Very little stigma anymore against cohabitation. You can do all these things. So the culture in those respects has just kind of collapsed.
I also believe that divorce is very accepted now. So a lot of people, it's almost like getting married is dating, and then you just break up by getting a divorce.
In the early 60s, when divorce was on the rise, people just thought that divorce was kind of a panacea to anything that was wrong in marriage. And then as time went on, I just intuitively knew that if I continued to help couples dissolve their marriages, I was contributing to this disposable marriage mentality, and it wasn't a good thing.
If things just don't go our way, the hell with it. You know, it's either disposable, I don't have time to deal with it, I don't want to deal with it, I don't have the energy, and I don't want to invest the emotion.
No matter how hard it is, in most circumstances, to work the marriage out, the price of divorce is usually always higher.
My parents got a divorce like, I guess, a year and a half ago, and my mom is now getting remarried, and I don't know if it's the right decision, really. So I guess I'm kind of cynical about myself and about, like, if it will come.
I read an article the other day that said that only 16% of all divorces are amicable. That means that the rest of them are divorces where a husband and wife hate each other and do everything they can to undermine each other's success. And the children are caught up in the middle of all of this.
What was it like watching your parents go through the process of separating?
It was just hard because they changed completely. Like, their just personalities completely changed, and they were just different.
feelings are the most notoriously changeable things in humankind, and you cannot hold long-term relationships based on the idea that you're going to be romantically in love with someone for the rest of your life.
And so you think, based off of that, you think maybe it's not possible for two people to stay together for a lifetime?
No, I do think it's possible. I definitely do. I think it's hard to find it, though.
I think we're going to see the same divorce rates we've got now for a while longer, because marriage is going through a huge transition from what we call the traditional hierarchical marriage to the new egalitarian horizontal marriage.
And with the change of women's status in society, marriage is being profoundly transformed. And what I love about the women's movement is I've always seen it as a liberation movement for both women and men. And that both women and men could move beyond their roles into who they authentically are.
We got the idea that you wanted independent women, and I struggle with that constantly, I think, to this day, because I'm super independent, and I just had to be. I mean, whether I wanted to or not, I'm super independent.
After World War I, we started in on our modern economic lifestyle, in which more and more women were moving into the job market, as they are today in societies around the world. And as women become more economically powerful, they become more socially powerful and more sexually powerful. And that's really what we're seeing in so many cultures, women expressing their sexuality. I think we're going to come in America to clearly understand that women's sex drive is just as strong as men.
I found a book written 50 years ago about the American woman, but a British anthropologist. And 50 years ago, half a century, he said, American women have accomplished everything but one thing, to be feminine. Wow.
What do you think is powerful about being a woman or whatever? And I remember we had to write our answers down, and she kept them until the end of the school, the semester or whatever, and then she returned them to us. And I remember being shocked. Like, I said something like, you can manipulate and control men, you know, that's the power of being a woman or whatever. And I remember getting that back at the end, like, that's kind of horrible. Like, that's what I think is powerful. Like, that's not cool. You know, all of a sudden I felt my strength is in a different place, and, you know, just being able to manipulate men with, you know, sexually or whatever.
Women are starting earlier at sex. They're having more partners. They're expressing less remorse for the partners that they've got. They're marrying later. They're divorcing when it's not a good relationship. They're having fewer children. They're spending a much longer time in the job market, and they're expressing their sexuality.
It's crazy. It's almost like our society is sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy where everybody talks about the differences between men and women. I certainly think that the liberation of women has created a whole new set of dynamics in terms of relationships.
That's a huge problem. She's always wants sex. I like doing other things. I like waking up in the morning and going to have breakfast. You know? I like to wake up and, you know, after I have breakfast, go about my day and do things. She would lay in bed all day and just have sex every single day.
But not with most guys. It's so weird.
And she'll just sit there and just, I get really annoyed because I like to wake up and go. She'll and get mad at me and force me to lay there with her, and I'm just bored out of my mind.
Well, I think that women should date more than one man at a time without creating a cockfight, you know, and that women should have a flock of suitors until a man has really expressed that he's got the same relationship goals that she does and wants to have them and fulfill them with her. This is of paramount importance. Most women are giving up their exclusivity for men who have not stated that they want the same things that they do, and that they don't want to have them with them. Just because somebody says that they're not sleeping with other people doesn't mean that they have any intentions of marrying you or having a family. And women are often stunned to find out a year into a relationship the guy doesn't really think they're truly compatible.
We're in a situation where the sexual and gender revolutions, which are all supposed to benefit women, really aren't benefiting women quite as much as one might have hoped. But they are, if you can call it that, benefiting men in the sense that they're able to lead sort of the single playboy lifestyle that most young guys at least want to. And then, of course, the question is, how are they going to ever change, and when are they going to make the move? Why won't men commit? And so those are the big issues of our time.
I've cheated on every girlfriend I've ever been with, and I've felt bad about it every time.
If you want me to be candid, monogamy doesn't work.
I didn't realize that adultery was as common until after I went through it, because once I went through it, then everybody, all my friends started coming out of the closet going, hey, well, I've had this problem. Hey, my husband cheated on me, or my wife cheated on me, and you know, it's more common than people think.
The statistics are overwhelming. In that sermon I told you about, where I talked about keeping your word and I talked about adultery, I quoted a British study that said something like 70% of men at one point or another, you know, have an extramarital sexual experience. Now that may be, you know, a prostitute one night at a convention in Cleveland, you know, not an ongoing, truly adulterous, you know, affair of some kind. So there's a range of experience, but it is a line that most men, you know, cross, and one I suspect most women know most men cross.
I saw a CNN report, it was probably about a year ago, on the ashleymadison.com website, the billboard in LA that says, life is short, have an affair. And I just, you know, obviously that, you know, that fulfills a particular market need, but I just said to myself, what a sad commentary on our society and on the marital construct if that's what's influencing assaulting, or if that's what people need to survive within the marriage relationship.
So then I go online and find out that he has a profile on an online dating site that says he's married and looking for secret rendezvous. So then I go back to his emails and I start going through his sent files and deleted files, and started finding all these correspondence with all these different girls, and just realized that he had been cheating on me basically for the past 6 months. That was one of the most devastating days of my life, to find out that your husband had pretty much a secret life behind your back.
If anything I would love to understand about women is that why I can't lie to you? Because you really don't want to know the truth. You know what I'm saying? You say, hey, Tony, ask me, you know, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. Have you cheated on me? If I tell you the truth, you ain't gonna really like the truth.
Overwhelmingly men who are struggling with this issue. Look, we're biologically built to want to impregnate the world, you know. I mean, we just are. So that's, you know, it's a very difficult struggle for men, and I think it comes down to being honest in your marriage about what you want and what you need and how often you want it and need it, and a lot of people aren't willing to have that conversation.
She took me to dinner to ask me questions because her and her husband were having problems. She actually cheated on her husband, had an affair for a few months, got pregnant. He found out about the affair, and they didn't know who the baby was, or who the father was of the baby. So for 9 months, she had to go through a pregnancy with her husband, and he didn't know if it was his baby or not until it got tested after it was born. I can't imagine going through something like that.
Although these three brain systems, lust, romantic love, and attachment, are often interrelated in largely mysterious ways, they can also be disconnected from each other. You can feel deep attachment to one person while you feel intense romantic love for somebody else, while you feel the sex drive for a group of people unrelated to either of the other two. And this is where the human animal is in a pickle. I mean, all of us at some point in our lives have lain in bed at night and tried to decide what to do about these conflicting emotions.
I chose to believe in a man that had left his first wife for his second wife, who left his second wife for his third wife, which was me, who then went on to have affairs.
Do you really think he cares?
Many things happen during that protest stage. Foremost, you just love the person harder. It's called frustration attraction. And I now understand that that is because this reward system in the brain just becomes more active. You feel a higher dopamine rush. This is why you can't sleep at night. You obsessively think about the person. You'll drop into their place of work and to tell them you'll never see them again. You walk out, 10 minutes later, you're back to say it again. I mean, people do crazy things when they're madly in love and they've been rejected because they've got the chemical energy and the tremendous desire to win this person back.
In this weekend with Harville and Helen, there was a moment in the room that changed my life forever. And at the same time, I was having this incredibly transforming experience and understanding the beauty and the magic. My own husband, who I loved, was committing adultery at the very same moment that I was there.
I mean, why go through all this? But we're saddled with a brain system that evolved long ago.
Now here we are, you and me, waiting around in this debris.
Couples have to make the same kind of commitment to sex and the same kind of commitment to making time for sex and romance that they do for anything else in their lives. And if they don't, it's going to lead to some pretty serious dysfunction.
I think for far too long, the church has dropped this ball. The church has tried to keep the bed out. And I think it's time for the church to bring the bed into the facility and into conversations and sermons and teaching, and to talk about the fact that God is pro-sex. You know, he's the one that invented it. He thought it up. You know, man didn't make it up.
There have been many, many studies of sexuality in which sex becomes better with commitment. And it's not as good with couples who are married, but still sort of uncertain about whether or not they're going to stay together. There's something about that makes it satisfactory, makes it maybe a discharge, makes it somehow self-nurturing, but it's not rich and deep and spiritual. And that when couples solidify their marriages, their sexuality deepens, improves, and everything gets better. I think with the stability and safety comes a passion that you can't have until you have stability and safety.
And there has to be some forthright conversation, which goes something like this: honey, we're going to have more sex than you would like and less than I would like. But we're going to figure this out, and this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to take to keep us together. This is what it's going to take to keep me from looking someplace else. And you've got to be willing to engage at that level, and to reinvent yourselves in that way.
There's a song out. It used to be, I haven't heard it in years, but then we used to hear it. And kiss an angel good morning and love her like the devil when you get back home. Oh, I can take it, Mom.
I know it. I can dish it out, too.
I know it. I know
well,
that.
Give me a kiss and let's shut this up.
I know that,
That's
too.
That's a heck of a kiss.
Have you ever had like a really serious fight, a huge disagreement? Over the years, you've got to have had like one or two.
No.
No.
You've never made your wife mad at all. Never come home drunk.
Mad, but we don't fight. And I made him really mad, but we don't fight.
Really? Okay, that's a first. Let's see if. And you guys, do you want to tell the truth maybe on this question?
We are
We're
telling
telling
the truth, really.
No, we disagree with each other, but never really
Never mad enough to leave.
We always figured to forget about it after it's over with.
Never had like the I'm going to a birthday party of an ex-girlfriend and she really likes me. That's okay, honey, if I don't come home tonight. Fight.
You have to realize we've been married for how many years, so how old are we? We can't remember those things.
We say that the power struggle is the second stage of marriage, which means when it happens, it's to be expected. And the culture thinks that if you go into conflict, you've then got an indication that you're with the wrong person. And we say when you go into conflict, that's an indication you're with the right person.
Because the reality is that sometimes the best relationships don't always feel the best to be in. You're going to look at these challenges or these hardships as if there's some problem in your relationship, and that's actually not a relationship problem. A relationship problem is not being able to work through a problem. You know, there's going to be death, there's taxes, there's difficulty, there are infidelities, there's, you know, God forbid, like terrible illnesses, there's parents that are going to die. So if your focus is self-gratification, then you don't have the right focus in terms of being able to have a fulfilling and long-sustaining relationship.
We were raised to believe that love conquers all. It really isn't true. Love is the first 50%, I would say, that you need to have a successful marriage. But there's a whole second 50%, a whole another half that you need, or it won't work even if you're in love. The saddest divorces, by the way, are people who are still in love. But they don't have that other 50%. They don't have shared values. They aren't able to communicate in a way that's loving and filled with teamwork. They're just little attorneys, you know. They're only able to be little attorneys and argue their point, and they have to be right.
You told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared. And I told you that I felt the same. My heart is open for you. I'll never let it close. I told you that I felt the same.
We have never yelled at each other, ever, in the 6 years we've been together. Even when we were going
I have
through,
on the inside.
even when we were really going through a really hard time, you know, and I was hurt by some things, and I don't think I even yelled at you during that time. So weird.
No, we just don't go there. No.
Yeah, and we don't ever say mean things to each other. Like, we've never called each other anything mean.
No, I said shut up once jokingly, and it was like, wow, it felt weird. And she was like, I can't believe you just said that.
But you were kidding.
I was kidding, yeah, but
kidding.
that's just an example.
But it was
of
weird. It was like,
Yeah.
don't tell me to shut up.
Words hurt, words kill, words destroy relationships. And it took me many years as a woman to realize I was just as harmful to a relationship by what I said, my criticism, my judgment, my unhappiness, my blaming.
I thought I was protecting my wife by shutting down because I wasn't expressing all the anger that I grew up with. I thought I was being liberal. Do whatever you want, just leave me alone. And it took me 10 years to realize what I was telling her is, you're worthless. You're not worth my attention. And it was such an eye-opener because that's the last thing I meant and the last thing I wanted her to feel.
So when a woman feels distant or anxious or somehow upset, her natural response is to reach out, to initiate contact, and it often comes in the form of a complaint. For example, if I call my girlfriend and I say, I've had such a bad day, she'll say, what? Honey, tell me. You want me to come over? Women hear complaints as an invitation to move closer, but a man hears a complaint as sooner or later it's going to be my fault.
The real problem, though, is the connection or the attachment style for men is protect and connect. If they can feel protective, they can make a connection. So when your girlfriend will say something she's worried about or something she's concerned about, you want to jump right in there and tell her, I'm going to be there for you. Don't worry about that. And you feel protective and she feels safe and secure.
You say to them one day, I want to ask you a question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how much love do you feel coming from me? And if they give you a 7 or 6 or anything less than 10, you say, well, what could I do to bring it up to a 10? And they give you a suggestion. And to the best of your ability, you do that. And a week later or so, you say, okay, 0 to 10, how am I doing? And eventually they'll give you a 9 or a 10. And once they give you a 9 or a 10, then the next week you can make a request of them. You can say, honey, you know something that would really make me happy? And you make a request that's in keeping with your own love language. And because they feel loved by you, they're very likely to respond and reciprocate. And so they begin to speak your love language.
Coming out of my previous relationship where things were remembered for a very long time, when I first started to have discussions with Nadia, like it's time that we sit down and talk about something that's just not working, I would think, oh boy, you know, what's the long-term effect of this? Is it really worth me even mentioning? Because, you know, but yeah, I feel it. I got to say something, you know, or it's going to build up in me, and it's starting to become annoying, so I have to say something. And so I would say it, and she'd go, oh, I didn't realize that I did that, yeah. Okay.
All couples who have great marriages have to end negativity. They just have to end shame, blame, and criticism. You just have to do it. But you know, it takes 3-6 months, sometimes 2 or 3 years to get a couple to finally clean up their negativity, get it out. So we decided to go cold turkey. Today, never again will I ever say a negative thing about you to you. And we made that as a vow. And for 3 months, we were in real trouble because
we didn't have much
know how to
to
relate
say
to each other.
A lot of
We didn't have much to
silence.
say. A lot of silence.
I had so much growing up to do those first 25 years. The years that he was gone to the service, I grew up to a degree because he had made it easy for me always before, and he has tried to make it easy for me ever since. But I was too stubborn and to realize that. But after our lifestyle changed, I can say it's been a good life.
Could you really share your dreams and forgive all those things like they have? Would you stand the test of time when everything is on the line?
Incidentally, if you looked at Europe, which I spent a lot of time doing, seeing what lies ahead for us, the average age of marriage over there for guys in some countries now, average age is 35. So if you figure they leave home at age 19 or 20, you got 15, maybe 20 years of living a single lifestyle. Has nothing to do with long-term relationships or commitment. And then the question is it going to be really easy to suddenly, for the rest of your life, jump into something where you're in one relationship with one person for eternity? I'm not so sure, and that's the problem that we face today.
I'd like to be married for 5 days a week and single for 2. Essentially, that's the way. That would be. I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking probably for, you know, millions of individuals. You know, to not have to, you know, explain yourself, your actions, what you do.
Do you feel like there's pressure to go outside your relationship and experience different people while you're young, kind of live it up?
Yeah, definitely. I get that from my parents and my family a lot. They say, you're in college, you're young, you don't know what you want yet. You know, all the typical things parents say to kids who are in a relationship. But I think they're wrong.
So it's that phase of life that we're all looking at and asking ourselves, well, does what one does in this phase of life have anything to do with what happens later on?
What's the best thing about being single here on this campus?
I think you should ask him that question. I guess the variety of women, like going to the clubs and just knowing that any night you could bring a girl home.
In a sense, the hookup culture is the best thing that ever happened to guys. They don't have to work for anything. They can just, if they're halfway decent looking, they can have their pick of beautiful girls.
Are you looking for a relationship, or would you rather just experience different people?
I'm experiencing different people just because I'm not in a relationship and I'm sad and I miss my ex-boyfriend a lot.
So are you going on dates? Are you hooking up?
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Singles that have more sexual partners have greater likelihood of infidelity in marriage. And so, I mean, we know that patterns that you set when you're single don't stop when you get married.
I think sex is for two people who truly love each other. That's why I think it's just for marriage. And too many people are doing it just with anyone these days. And
Too many people are getting hurt because of it, I think.
People get burned,
big time.
you know, and then they go into the next relationship with some of the effects on how they feel, what they think of, you know, the opposite sex, or what they think of relationships.
I was in a 2-year relationship, like last year. I ended it, and it's too much. Like, I don't know. I feel like once you're in love and it's ruined so badly, like you just don't want to tell anybody that ever again.
The hurt and the pain that is being experienced is probably just catapulted into a new dimension because of the physical relationship. If you if they weren't having sex, then yes, there's emotional ties and all of that. But the sexual experience is a huge bonding between a man and a woman, and you just don't lightly take it away.
I think you need to date someone long enough to where the shine wears off. I call it the 4 seasons approach to dating. You need to go through at least 4 seasons together where the shine wears off, where you see the other person on the rugged plains of reality.
Now I'm back at a stage where I've only been dating Jessica for 2 months, but we're living together. I mean, we're committed.
Don't be ashamed to pace a relationship in a way that not only builds a great foundation for a future marriage if you end up marrying that person, but keeps your eyes clearly seeing what the person is like, so that as time unfolds, characteristics of that person or patterns that were at first hidden, as time unfolds, you see it without so much investment that you overlook it and minimize it and end up ultimately being deeply wounded.
I can talk to her intellectually. I can talk to her as a friend. I can talk to her about anything. I'm like, dude, every time I look at her, I'm like, I cannot believe how gorgeous this woman is, and she's with me, and she's mine.
When I look into your eyes, I can see forever is gone.
And she loves me for who I am. God knows Red Dog has some shit. I got some baggage.
I knew the Jessica thing was real screwed up from the beginning. Instantly saw that. We met her real early on before they moved to Canyon Lake, and I went, holy shit, Ryan, why are you doing this? And, you know, it's not his kind of person.
It was a day trip. My dad and I went down there, and we're on our way back. And she tells me when I get there at the house that she's like, well, I'd actually like for you to get your stuff, and I've decided that I just want to live there by myself. And I'm like, obviously, like, what? Yeah, I mean, basically how I'd opened it was obvious that, shit, I freaking opened my heart up wide open. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I met the girl.
I look for light.
And and again, I don't believe there's one girl on this planet for us, but I hadn't connected with a girl like her, and haven't, and probably ever.
I think maybe he's still carrying some of the baby boomer generation things over. Got to get married, got to have kids, and blah, blah, blah. And that's the worst reason to do any of that. That is the worst reason. You want to do it for love, and love only. Not for money, not for anything else. And because there's not anything any better than a great relationship. It's the best thing there is. There's not anything any worse than a bad relationship or marriage. His mother and I laughed. 3 days after we were married, we were watching the first guy land on the moon. We looked at each other and said, what the hell we get married for?
What do I have to say about the people that have come onto the film to talk about their relationships? I really admire what they've done. The way they've felt and the way they've expressed it is extremely moving to me.
While you're dating and falling in love, any red flags that come up are opportunities to have more depth in your relationship.
If it were up to me, we'd be married. We really would be. But I've also been holding out for a long time for a reason, you know, because I don't fully trust her.
The main way I would judge whether you want to proceed is how the two of you handle those, because these are examples of the kinds of problems you're going to have in the future.
I guess we have the opposite problem as most people. Yeah, we have the complete opposite problem. Most people have trouble finding the fun within all the business and their everyday tasks. We're always having fun, so it's hard.
We're always having good sex.
Okay, and
why, you don't think so?
I'm not trying to talk. You always interrupt.
Ask yourself, is this a family I want to marry into? Again, with the exception being if the person you're marrying comes from a really messed up family, but they've maybe gotten some therapy and they have some handles on it, okay. But if they don't have any perspective on it, I'd run for the hills.
The biggest mistake that Lisa and I have made in our marriage is we did not get solid premarital counseling before we walked down the wedding runner. I would encourage everybody and their iguana to get great counseling.
One thing that we talk about all the time is our communication. We have really good communication, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't have. They're not as honest with one another and as willing to sit down and talk about the real issues that matter instead of, you know, just acknowledging that there's an issue and then not doing anything about it.
I think that in order to have a future, we have to learn how to be less self-centered and self-involved and wanting all the immediate gratification. And Zen practice really teaches us that, you know, really one of the basic teachings in Zen is in a relationship, not what are you going to do for me now, but how may I serve you?
I mean, if she asks me anything, I'm going to say yeah, so it's, you know, I can't even, there's nothing that she's going to do that I won't do. Except when I'm watching football and she'll come and ask me, she'll just, she says, honey, you know, honey, I need you to do this. Whenever you get a chance, you don't have to do it right now, but in the next 5 minutes, you know, that type of thing. Can you go pick up those boxes downstairs and bring them up in the middle of the fourth quarter with, you know, the Falcons beating the Panthers by 2 points and they're on the 10-yard line. Because she doesn't care about the football game. But other than that, it's all good, man.
I can't imagine having loved anyone else other than my Lord than I've loved Grandpa. He's been my life. And because of him, we've acquired a lot of other lives and loves. Our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids. That's love that can't be explained. And I love you. Oh, how I love you. It almost makes your heart burst with love. And that's why I wish everybody in the world could have that same kind of love.
It frees up your life. It frees up bound energy, repressed energy, held energy, but somehow you suddenly feel alive. And when you feel alive, you realize you missed that. You lost that when you were little. And when you feel alive, everything is alive. The trees, the birds, the rocks, the universe.
I totally have a fantasy of becoming stronger with another person, feeling like my life has more meaning because this other person is in it, because I have somebody to share everything with, somebody who cares if I have success or not. You know, like all of a sudden that somebody who just likes me just because of who I am.
It's true. I mean, we talk within our relationship of, you know, feeling like we just fell in love again. And love is, it's like an indescribable thing. It's communication, it's caring, it's tenderness, it's,
It's-
affection, it's everything.
knowing that,
you know?
it's knowing, as far as marriage is concerned, it's knowing that you couldn't be the same without your spouse.
Right.
You wouldn't be the same person that you are without your spouse.
Hell, let's break it down to Grandma Brick Dog. The stages in life, you know.
You're born and you're a little kid, and then you get into teen years. If you're lucky,
You fall in love, and then one day you get married, and then
you start building the home. That's another stage. And then you get so involved, if you have children, you get so involved with them that you, even though we never did forget each other or did always kissed goodnight, you kind of go your separate ways. He was busy with his work, and before I started working out, I was busy with the house and doing all those things. And then the kids start leaving. And then after they're gone, that's a complete another stage of your life. Then you have to adjust all over again. You don't fall in love all over again because you're already in love, but it's a different kind of love. It's a more respectful type of love.
I went to visit a man, his name was Sid, 92 years old. And he was dying. It was his last day of life. I'd seen him once before, and now, it was pretty clear he was going to die in the next few hours. And I walked into the hospital room, and there was Helen, his wife, by his bedside. And I was so privileged to just stand there in that room and listen to the two of them whisper to each other before he died. And he just kept saying her name, "Oh, Helen, oh, Helen, oh, Helen." And she leaned over the railing on the bed and kissed him on the forehead and said, "Sidney, thank you for taking such good care of me for so long." And he said, "Thank you." Very fortunate people. To have had someone hang in there with you for 50, 60, 70 years. That's a pretty rare treasure, That's worth it. That's worth it.
I think this story hit home with me just because of my relationship with my grandparents and knowing that they're sort of in their final stages of life, and they're very conscious about it. They're conscious about death and what that means and where they want to go after they leave this planet, which is a beautiful thing. Along this journey, I met a beautiful family up north of San Francisco, the Carlsons, and Richard Carlson had written the book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Unfortunately, a major event happened in their lives and really disrupted what I think their view was for a long-term lifelong commitment.
I suspected that I was a strong person, you know, just based on, you know, how I've lived. But if you had asked me before Richard died, could I survive living without Richard? I would have said no. He just got on a plane, routine, you know, a routine flight to New York, and on the descent of that flight, he had a pulmonary embolism. Yeah, it was shocking, beyond words, shocking. Like, it was horrifying. It was a nightmare. You know, it's a dance. You know, you're a family unit, you're a family of 4, and then one person is all of a sudden gone. Well, there's a whole dynamic, and now we're 3 women in a home and without our man, you know, without a father, without a husband. I mean, if you allow your grief to just do what it's there to do, which is ultimately to heal you, you know, from the separation of the loss that you're experiencing, it's pretty amazing what, you know, what we know how to do. He wrote, "Don't sweat the small stuff," and I can now say, I don't sweat the small stuff. And I can also say, yes, darling, you can be happy no matter what. We're one flesh. When we said I do, we became one flesh. And we don't take that lightly, and we don't take it for granted, but there's strong parameters and things that help us undergird that relationship each day.
I often say a relationship is a mirror in which we see ourselves. And sometimes whatever we don't accept in another person is something we haven't accepted in ourselves. Unfortunately, people get stuck on the greed, the possessiveness, the infatuation. So, you know, optimally speaking, there's a beautiful teaching that says when you get married or when you choose a partner, you think, well, this is the perfect person, I'm at the peak of my love. They say, not at all. This person has come to teach you what it means to love.
Do you guys realize how therapeutic this could be for someone now? Like if you bring a couple on and ask them questions like this and get them talking and thinking about like their relationship, you know, I guarantee they're all going to leave here and kiss each other and have probably the best day they've had in a long time, you know?
As we reflect on this, we're trying to get at that deeper level of the true energy of love. And I think one of the things we would say about it is it is a vast mystery. It is something that emerges in inexplicable ways, in inexplicable times. But what we do believe about it is that boundaries help protect this energy of love that can emerge in our life, and that setting up, that there is a process of care and a way to honor this energy that requires commitment.
You stay when it's the worst, is when you maintain and reinforce the commitment to stay. Because what we've learned in Imago over the years, when it gets really bad, that's when it's about to change. And most people leave when it's really bad. So they never get to the change. And I think that's such a tragedy. That's why we're still out here, why we're having this interview, why we would want anybody to do this. I don't know why I'm so moved by all that. But that's it. I'm alive. I'm alive to all my feelings. I'm alive to everything around me. Everything is alive. But I think what I've discovered with Helen is that experience is available for everybody. You don't have to be a mystic. You don't have to go to your cave. You don't have to pray. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to go through all this discipline. What you have to do is go in a relationship with somebody you fell in love with, shut the gate, and say, we're here until we become each other's healer. And you don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to be me, you know, but the me I was a half me. And so Helen, she needs the other half of me for herself to be healed. The part of me that got repressed is unavailable to her. So she says, I need that. So when I lock the gate, I have to say, oh God, okay, you know, I'll stretch into that. I'll do something about that. And then you can just see, you know, I look at Helen and I can just see the vitality emerging in her. It's like a flame that when I stretch begins to flower. And I feel it in me when she responds to me. And then I know we've discovered something. And what we discovered is love. And that's what love is. Love is what gives life to the world.
Not all of us are fortunate enough to be able to have the skills and the resources and the ability and the heart and the soul to sustain that commitment, but some of us are. And it's a miracle. So when we go back to the Song of Songs, who's to say that human love isn't a reflection of the love of God for human beings? Because it's the greatest gift human beings possess. The greatest thing given to us is this capacity for human love. I'm not sure if any of us would want to live without it.
Could you really share your dreams and forgive all those things like they have? And would you like to sing a beautiful melody like they have?
What we're really seeing in the change of marriage is we're moving away from the traditional concept of what marriage is, and we're moving into the concept of almost a continual courtship.
I guess my hope for this project is that it will inspire people to be more open and honest and more conscious about our relationships, and ultimately providing a path towards healing. And I also hope that people want to share this with people they love.
You've gone through the innocent stages, you went through the passionate stages, then you go into this.
They say you'll be fine.
I can honestly say that the stage that we're in now, even though we are not physically well, it's the most wonderful stage of all, because we can look back on it and see accomplishments.
Would you like to say that you made it all this way like they have?
We can remember mistakes and know that we've grown from them, but most of all, it's just been a wonderful life.
touch, every kiss so sweet, but never really meant for me. Don't you dare believe me, I think too much, but I can picture